Max, thank you so much for joining me one more time. Maxime Bernier of the PPC party, and excited to have you back on here because you have a lot of exciting things to bring to the table for Canada. And definitely, it's refreshing to hear something outside of the two mainstay parties and the third party, the center, the left, and the lefter. So it's nice having a chat with you, and I have you for a good 25 minutes or so. So let's get right into it. I really wanted to talk about some hard-hitting issues, but recently, it's the beginning of the new year, and we have a whole lot of new taxes. Can you tell us anything about the new taxes that we have and what the Liberal Party has brought on us?
Yeah, actually, we must also know why we are having all these taxes. And the first one that everybody knows is the inflation tax. It is a tax because we are paying higher prices for our goods and services because of the huge deficit, irresponsible deficit that the Trudeau Liberal government did with the support of the Conservative Party of Canada and Pierre Poilievre. As you remember before, during the pandemic, Trudeau said that, we need to stay at home and he will give us money doing nothing. And we created that deficit of $450 billion. And now we are paying the inflation tax first. And that tax will be there also, I believe, for a couple of years. It's bad to say, but the inflation won't go down the next couple of weeks or months. So that being said, that is the inflation tax. And after that, also, we have new taxes that the federal government did in the last budget that will be enforced the 1st of January this year. And it's all to try to tackle the deficit. But the problem is not the income problem for the federal government. Is mostly a problem of spending. We are spending too much and we must cut our spending to balance the budget. But the Trudeau Liberals and the Conservatives won't do that. And the easy way for a politician, it's always to increase our taxes. So as you may know, Canadians are paying a lot for their food, and the standard of living is going down. And that will be the case for this year. So it will be a very tough year. I want to wish to everybody a Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I hope that it will be like that all the time in 2023. But we need to speak about real bold reform for this country.
So what I want to talk about is how they backdoored these taxes in. They call them contributions. They're not taxes. It's the Liberal Party saying, oh, well, there's CPP or EI contributions. These are things that are payroll taxes that everybody knows as taxes. But most people don't actually look at their pay stubs to see how much they were paid before the government took it away. So it's kind of a sneaky other way of getting it from you, from your back pocket, it seems. And we have, of course, the inflation tax that you talked about. This is something that's, again, stolen right from your bank account by just taking the value out of the currency. Now, we're looking at an economic situation moving forward, and a lot of people, there's gold bugs. There's people saying, I don't know what to do with my money. Where should we go? Are we looking at a currency crisis at the moment with our inflation going as high as it's going? Where's the end point?
But I believe, it's the inflation. It's not only a Canadian challenge. It's also all across Western countries. We have inflation in US. We have inflation in Europe because of bad economic policies. And as you know, in these countries, they did the same thing like in Canada. These politicians said to their people, stay at home and we will give you money that we don't have. So we'll create a huge deficit. And that was financed by their central banks. So when that happened, we have inflation. So that's why we have inflation in Canada, we have inflation in Europe, in UK, in USA, everywhere. So, and I believe that I said that before. We used to have a currency that is based on gold and a gold standard in the 19th century. And since 1971, Nixon just closed the gold window. At that time, central banks were able to ask for gold instead of US dollar. But Nixon closed that window, and the US dollar now it's a real fiat monetary system. They can print money, and they're doing that right now in the US with that huge deficit, and they are financing the war in Ukraine. They are printing more money. So when that is happening, other countries are looking at the US, and that's why central banks in China, central bank also in Russia, in other countries, they are buying gold, because I believe that you'll have a new monetary order that can be in 10 years, that can be in 5 years, but usually a fiat monetary system will be there for 100 years or something like that. And we can see that other countries are losing their confidence in the US dollar, and they're looking for an alternative. Just at the BRICS countries, as you know, Brazil, Russia, India, and China and South Africa, they are together and they try to have a new currency that will be based on gold or some commodities. And that will be a strong competition to the US dollar. So something will happen, but I believe it won't be tomorrow.
So this is a good question going from that. You were in government with the Conservatives under Harper, and under Harper, there was all kinds of trade negotiations done, especially with China. And I live in British Columbia. A lot of the reservations with Harper's trade deals was when they were talking about LNG and wood fiber. They were saying, well, you're making an agreement with China that if we can't hold up to our end of our bargain, they can fine us. What kind of a trade agreement is that? And since you were part of the party, do you have any insight towards that?
Yeah, I believe in free trade. It's always good when everybody can buy goods without tariff. And but at the same time, also we must know that China is not our friend. And yes, we did sign a free trade agreement when I was a conservative, and Harper did it. But I believe that right now we have legislation in place in Canada, and the most important for me is to stop the Chinese Communist Party to buy some of our assets. They try to buy our natural resources. And we have the legislation called Investment Canada. So when there's a huge takeover, the government can stop it. And I believe that the government must use it if China try again to buy some of our natural resources.
Yeah, it just catches me off guard, because when you hear words like we entered a free trade agreement, wouldn't it just be one page? We will freely trade amongst each other, but that's not how it works. Now, you talked about Russia. You got into the Russia-Ukraine thing. That's not been a big purview of mine. I'm not very interested. I don't have a dog in that fight. But where I do have a dog in the fight, and we heard your opinion on it, and I really, if you want to get into that, where we should be on that, I'll let you get into it. But what I want to first talk about is asset forfeiture, and this is something that our government is getting their hands into, and it's like the only of the G7 nations that are talking about seizing the assets of oligarchs in order to give it back to Ukraine by whatever means or definition that they're coming up with this concept. It seems like just political theater to me. But my main security problem with this is people's property rights. And if people's property rights are not respected, then we lose a lot of things. We lose our market economy, first and foremost, and then we lose the respect and the trust from investors that would like to come to Canada and invest in our resources, in our economy, and all of these things. Where is the government going with this? And $26 million US does not seem like a decent amount of money to suspend basically property rights in Canada.
Yeah, but actually, Trudeau did it for Canadians at the Freedom Convoy last year when, they invoked the Emergencies Act. And yes, they did it. They froze a bank account of Canadians who were donating to the Freedom Convoy. That was the first time in the history of our country that the federal government did that without the approval of a court, and that was scary. Now the U.S. government is weaponizing the U.S. dollar, and that's the U.S. government, the Biden government that started that, and they froze a bank account coming from leaders of the with Putin and all these oligarchs, and so that's why what I said before. That's why other countries are looking to an alternative for the U.S. dollar, because they said they're thinking it can happen to us, and so we need to have another currency that will compete against the U.S. dollars. And for the war in Ukraine, I said that in the beginning, and I'm the only national leader that has said that and believe that it is not our war. We must not be there. We must not give money to Ukraine. We must look at the history, and the history is very, very clear. If you remember, in 1962, Khrushchev tried to put some missiles in Cuba. That was the Cuban crisis at that time. And Kennedy said, no, I don't want these missiles at my doors, and I cannot tolerate that. And they had a negotiation, and the part of the negotiation was, you won't put missiles at my doors, and we won't do that also. But now what Putin was asking, he was asking for the same thing in the beginning of that war when he did the invasion. I'm not for Putin. I'm not pro-Putin. Putin is a murderer, is a dictator. But what he said to the West, he said, I don't want Ukraine to be part of NATO, because if Ukraine is part of NATO, you will have a NATO base in Ukraine, like Khrushchev tried to do in Cuba. So he had a point there, but we are not discussing that. There's no discussion. And it's dangerous. It's always escalating, and now it's like a proxy war with the using Ukraine, US, and Russia. It's very dangerous, and I believe that we, like the history of our country, is to be peacemaking, and we must try to ask all these parties to be at the same table and try to have a diplomatic solution of that crisis. That's the position of the People's Party. We are the only party that is asking for that. And I believe that is in line with the history of our country. We don't need to be in every war like following the US. And if you remember the war in Iraq, at that time, Chrétien said, no, we don't have to do anything there. We won't participate. So I believe that our country must be independent, and we must not be part of that war. And it's too bad that we are, and it's too bad that the conservative with Poilievre, the Liberals, the NDP, the Green, the Bloc Québécois in Quebec, they are all pro-war.
I'll have to push back though a little bit. We are not at war with them. We've not declared war with Russia. We're not entered into any agreements with Ukraine. We've just been sending them all of our tax dollars. That's really all we've been doing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about it. But we are sending them also arms. We are helping them. We are, and like the US. But first of all, we are broken. We don't have, our huge deficit, and we are giving ammunitions, arms, and also some of our soldiers are there to teach and to help Ukraine soldiers. So we are part of that. But yes, you're right. We didn't declare any war against Russia. But the way that the Prime Minister is speaking, Russia is a big enemy of our country. And for me, that must be China, not Russia. Doing that, the West, we are pushing Russia in the arms of the Chinese. And that's not what we must do. Remember, Putin was ready to be part of the G20 and the G7, and we said no, the West, so we need to we don't need to be part of that. And sending arms and money to Ukraine, for me, it's too much.
So I wanted to get into some contemporary news, some things that happened just today. This was a tweet that Jordan Peterson put out. So just Max, I'd love to get your ideas on this. So Jordan Peterson put out breaking: the Ontario College of Psychologists, CP Ontario, has demanded that I submit myself to a mandatory social medical communication retraining. So social media communication retraining with their experts for, among other crimes, retweeting Pierre Poilievre and criticizing Justin Trudeau and his political allies. He later deleted a tweet and then put out there that I have been accused of harming people, although none of the complaints were involved. Current actions were my clients, or past or present, and none of them were even acquainted with any of his clients. Do you have any comments on this new breaking story just from today?
Yeah, I just learned about it. I didn't know that. You just tell me that. I don't know what to say about that, but I like Jordan Peterson. He's a very. I was with him a couple of times. I did some. He was in Montreal a couple of years ago, and I was with him. And I don't know the details of that, but my reason and my heart is with Jordan Peterson, and I believe that he must be right. But we need to wait a little bit. But if Jordan tweeted that, there's something there, and I believe that Jordan is very professional. And that's maybe leftists that try to discredit him like they're doing to me. And you cannot have any debates in our society anymore. Look about Ukraine. What I'm telling you, I try to participate in the debate in the national media, but they don't want me to explain that position on Ukraine. It's all one narrative. So that's radical leftists that may have something against Jordan Peterson because he's so popular. So I don't know more details about it. I will follow that story for sure.
Yeah, it seems a lot like, the bureaucracies that are in place are being weaponized to go after people for political reasons. And that's pretty much what a lot of people's take on this has been, as much information as we know so far, but we don't know that much. But I would like to get your take on something that Pierre Poilievre himself put out. So he's done his number of press conferences, and he talks in the question period. But this pertaining to China. So China has been having a bunch of outbreaks, and there's a lot of people are concerned. Not about COVID. People are concerned about it being drummed up again and us going into lockdown. And that's our big concern. Nobody wants it. Nobody's really that afraid. I mean, there are a few people that are quite afraid. But when asked about, are we going to be putting restrictions on the border and what's the conservative position, he had this to say.
Gallagher with CTV National News. Good morning, Mr. Poilievre.
Good morning.
So the United States has recently put in an order that would require COVID test results for those traveling from China. Would you want to see Canada follow suit? Where would you stand on something like that?
Well, we're conservatives are following this very carefully, and we know that the case numbers in China have exploded over the last several weeks. We haven't yet decided whether we're going to call for the government to impose a mandatory test or vaccination at the border for incoming Chinese flights from China. But we will watch it very carefully, and we'll base our position on science and numbers. As you recall, 2 years ago, we originally said the border needed to be closed to China after COVID began. The government refused to do so for, I think, over 60 days. We were listening to the data at that time, and we're listening to it now. But at this point in time, we're not making a public statement for or against mandatory testing at our ports of entry from China. We will keep you posted on our position, though.
So that got a lot of people riled up, and it got me quite riled up. And I'm not against Pierre Poilievre. I like a lot of the things that he has to say, but when he got up and said, basically in a nutshell, we haven't made a decision on what our position is on this yet. We don't have a principled one, I'm guessing. But we haven't made a decision. Maybe it's the polls, maybe it's the science. We've heard a lot about the science over the past years. Do you have anything to add to this?
first, yeah, because they didn't have time to do polling and focus group on that, because they're always looking at poll and focus group without, their position is it's not based on science. That was the same position that he had. He approved everything that Trudeau did during the last 2.5 years. So that being said, for us, our position is very clear. That vaccine passport didn't work. Everybody, the vaccine didn't work to stop the transmission. We know that. So now he said, oh, maybe we must ask them to do tests, or maybe to close our borders. And the experts are saying, no, it won't work. So we must open the economy and not stop anybody to come to our country. And we know that that virus is not deadly for the huge majority of Canadians, only for older people with comorbidities. We must protect the most vulnerable, like I said during that COVID-19, like the Great Barrington Declaration. They were right. So Poilievre is having the same position that he had during that crisis. It's like Trudeau. So for us, it's very clear. And maybe that variant may be in Canada right now. So there's no reason to do more tests or to close our borders. Let's leave because like I said, when I was doing some rallies, I said we must learn to live with that virus, and that's it, and that's the case. I'm not surprised what Poilievre said, because he didn't have time to do some polling and focus group, and he didn't believe in freedom of choice, really.
So when Pierre was on the campaign trail, he had a lot of things that felt like positions, like hard positions from a principled place, right? And this is where a lot of people were fascinated. Now, everything being done and said, he got in, he said a lot of really strong things, and then got pretty quiet afterwards. And a lot of people are commenting about that. And, there are a lot of people who watch the channel, huge fans, and people that don't like him. People are all over the place. But in your opinion, is he the candidate that the Conservatives were looking for? Or is he the candidate that the Conservative Party was looking for?
Yeah, he is, and he was the candidate of the establishment of the Conservative Party of Canada. And Pierre Poilievre is more intelligent than O'Toole, and he knew that to be able to win the leadership, you need to speak like a conservative, and like O'Toole did, like Scheer did, and Poilievre did it, and he was able to win the leadership. Now his goal is to be prime minister, and to be prime minister, he will have to do a lot of compromise. He will have to have the vote and the support in the big GTA in Ontario and in Vancouver. So to do that, he will go to the left, like O'Toole did, like Scheer did, because for him, it's not about conviction and principles. It's about to win the election. Poilievre is not doing what is the most important for our country. He is doing and speaking for what is the most popular. And there's a huge difference there. We are doing politics based on conviction, and it may not be popular what I'm saying, but for us, the more we speak about our principles or values, the more support we will have. And we are not doing politics based on focus group and polling. It's all about conservative, free market convictions, and putting our country first and putting Canadian first. So I'm not surprised that Poilievre is not speaking right now a lot like he was, because he's doing that transition. And you'll see the real Poilievre a couple of months before the election, because they will have a new platform. They will have a lot of time to do polling and focus group, and we'll see the real Poilievre with his policies couple of months before the next election. For us, at the next election, I will run on the same platform, the same one that we had in 2019, the same one that we had in 2021. We are doing politics based on conviction, and the more we speak, the more we believe that our ideas will be popular. From 0% in 2018 when we created the party, 1.6% in 2019, 5% at the last election. I don't know what will be our score at the next election, but I believe we will grow step by step, and the common sense will prevail.
Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of things change over the short while we've seen over the past few years. Things have changed. You haven't changed a whole lot. Your conviction still remains. The Conservative Party seems to be coming over to your positions in a lot of ways, because these are popular ideas with Canadians. Is there any chance, or has there been any discussion of a reconciliation with Maxime Bernier and the CPC, or is this a thing that's been over and you've parted your ways, or what would you say to that?
Yeah. No, I turned the page, and I said in 2017, when I left the party, 2018, sorry, I said that party is morally and intellectually corrupt. They are conservative only name. They don't have the courage to promote conservative ideas. And when they're promoting leftist ideas, they're giving more credibility to the liberals and to the leftists. And there's a lot of difference between us and Pierre Poilievre. For example, about climate change, we're the only party that don't believe in climate emergency. We won't do anything for climate change. We won't impose taxes or regulations, and Pierre Poilievre will try to follow the UN and the Paris Accord. On immigration, we are the only party that wants a sustainable immigration and more skilled immigrants. And we are saying we must close the Roxham Road in Quebec. This year, we'll have, not this year, but last year in 2022, sorry, 18,000 people crossed that border at the Roxham Road. And for me, they are not real refugees, and they're jumping the queue. We must help the real refugees. So on that is like the Liberals. I can go on the balancing the budget. He said that the most important for him is to freeze the budget and cutting some expenses, but doing other expenses that are in line with what he believes. So, Trudeau, before COVID-19, the federal budget was 19 billion less. And the budget grew by 90 billions during COVID-19. And Poilievre and Trudeau don't want to cut that. Poilievre wants to manage a big government with, being a good manager of a big government. And my goal is to be a good manager of a smaller government that will give you more freedom, that will balance the budget, that will lower your taxes, that will do this reform on immigration, taxation, climate change. We won't touch that. We won't give money to promote any crazy leftist ideas. And also, we are the only party that is speaking against wokeism and against globalism. So there's huge difference between me and us and Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party of Canada. That's why there's no, we cannot, and I won't go back what we built, and I believe that it was the best political decision that I took when we created the People's Party of Canada. So we will fight for what we believe, and we'll see what Poilievre will do. But for us, you can trust us. It will always be the same ideas.
You touched on something that I wanted to get into next, and that first, it's always big government, and the answer to big government, the problem being government, is more government, right? That's always the solution from a big government. But you talked about globalism. Now, for a lot of people that don't understand world economics or just global, like the way the world works in general, they hear someone who says, "I'm down with globalism." It makes them think that you're an isolationist, like you want to not be making trade deals with all these governments, and you don't want globalism is trade for around the world. What do you have to say to those people that don't understand maybe what globalism is versus trade?
Yeah, globalism is a world government, and we don't have that. We don't want that also. Look, just the best example is in Europe right now. They created a free trade agreement between European countries after the Second World War. It was very well, and after that, they had other agreements and other agreements. And at the end, they created a supranational government. And that's why you have a Brexit in UK. People in UK said, no, we want to regain our sovereignty. We want to decide here in London our future. And it took maybe 40 years, but they started by free trade agreements. And after that, they have the European Parliament that is a supranational authority. And we don't want that. We don't have that right now around the globe, and we don't want that. So when I'm saying that I'm against the globalism, I'm against the UN and all these organizations that try to impose their point of view on us. Look, the UN, they have the Migration Compact. From them and Canada signed, and we signed that compact. Trudeau did it. For them, it's normal. Everybody can migrate, can be a citizen of another country, and that's not the case. For us, we believe it's a privilege to be Canadian, and we need to. We have borders, and yes, we are open. We have a nice. We used to have an immigration policy that was good for the country, but now it's not the case. When you have 500,000 people every year, starting in 2025. That's, the population of Nova Scotia every 2 years. Newfoundland, sorry, the population of Newfoundland and every 2 years. That's mass immigration. We are against that. And same thing, for the environment with the UN, they are promoting climate change and climate emergency, and so we don't buy that. The climate will always change. And for us, it's not a priority. So being against globalists, it's being against people that think they know better than us here in Canada, and they try to influence our policies. We will put our country first, and yes, we will be part of the UN, but I believe that we can save a lot of money because we will participate with the UN when it will be in line with our values. If it's not in line with our values, the UN won't have our money, and we won't be part of their policies that they try to implement everywhere.
So it seems that these days we don't just have the UN as a big influence, but we have lobby groups that are coming from all over the place. There's these global lobby groups. A big, well-known one in recent times is the World Economic Forum, headed by Klaus Schwab, who's a man who boasted about having infiltrated cabinets around the world and peddles his influence within democratic countries, countries that we hold democracy to the utmost highest position in our countries. But democracy is meant to be representatives of the constituents, not of these global cabals, these global you could call them what you want. It's a lobby group. It's a lobby group saying these are the things that we want. You're going to implement them, whether your citizenry likes that or not. What does a PPC Maxime Bernier government look like when it comes to influence, lobbying, and peddling in Ottawa?
Well, we won't participate in the World Economic Forum for sure. We won't be part of that. But also, I must say that they cannot impose anything on us. We are a sovereign country. The World Economic Forum, it's a big think tank. It's a big socialist organization, and they're very efficient at promoting their socialist ideas. And actually, right now, we can feel the influence of the World Economic Forum here in Canada because Justin Trudeau decided to implement by legislation here these ideas and these socialist policies. So we won't participate in the World Economic Forum. We won't be part of that. We won't send any minister there, and we will promote our sovereignty. So people must understand that we are a sovereign country, and if we stand up and say no, nothing, they won't have any influence on us. But yes, I agree with you. The World Economic Forum and all these billionaires are very influential, and they are they successfully were able to influence Western democracy with their socialist ideas. And I don't want any of our civil servants to participate in that organization. So it's very clear for us.
I would argue it's I mean, socialism, Marxism is one thing, but I think Mussolini said it best that fascism is better known as the perfect merger between state and corporation. And I believe that a lot of these lobby groups fall more under a category such as that. Klaus Schwab, known for his warnings about the AI advent, the advent of AI, he calls it the fourth industrial revolution. Whatever you want to take from that, AI is going to be a thing in the future. What do you think AI what kind of effect will that have on our economy moving forward, untouched by the World Economic Forum, just in its natural state?
Yeah, we cannot be against technology. But what I don't want government to use technology to control us. And I believe that the next challenge for us as a country, for us as individual, will be to protect our privacy. And that will be the next big challenge that we will have, not only in Canada, but in Western countries, because of that new technology that can be useful. But we need to keep our privacy. And the best example of that is the central bank currency that, they want to implement a central bank currency. And, the central bankers, the Bank of Canada, will know everything about you, what you're spending. And they are saying it will be more efficient. No, we don't need that to have transactions that are efficient, and they are efficient right now. So the central bank digital currency, that may happen in our country because Justin Trudeau at the last budget gave $17 million to the Bank of Canada and to the Department of Finance to work on the legislation for 3 years, for the next 3 years, to work on the legislation to implement that central bank digital currency. And you can be sure that the People's Party is against that. We don't need that to have more efficient transaction. We need to protect our privacy. And that's another way. And that will be the beginning of the kind of social credit that they have in China. So I don't want that. We need to fight against that. And you can count on us to do that battle.
Well, you can count on me to fight against that for sure. Absolutely. I don't know how much time left do you have, Max. Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, maybe the last one, because I have a...
Okay, for sure. You got into wokeism. You're against wokeism. Is there something that the federal government under Maxime Bernier would move towards to, bring real things back when it comes to CRT, the critical race theory in schools, drag queens at story time, these kinds of things that parents are genuinely concerned about?
Yeah, so everything that is happening in school, it's not under the jurisdiction of the federal government. As you know, it's a provincial jurisdiction. So concretely, it would be very hard for us to stop that. But we will speak against that. And at the university level, we can cut funding if they are promoting that ideology, and we will. And at the same time, also in the Canadian Forces, now the Canadian Forces is a woke organization. They are promoting people not based on their competence, but only on the color of their skin. And like, I'm said, we must be blameless. We must not judge somebody by the color of their skin, but only by their character and their competence. So that would be us. That would be a government that would be very different. And for me, the cabinet, we won't have maybe 50 and 50 men, 50 women. Maybe it can be another ratio, because we will promote people that are competent. That will be it. So yes, we need. It's a kind of a cultural revolution that we need to do this in this country, because big corporations are woke right now, and you have the government, provincial government. You have that critical race theory. So I'm fighting against that, and we'll do our best at the federal level to change that.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Maxime Bernier. Really a pleasure to have you. And having this ongoing dialogue in Canada, I think, is one of the most important things that we could do. I wish more of the candidates out there would engage in that, but hopefully having you out here would encourage more of them to engage in this, because this is exactly what we need.
And that's why, I like what you're doing. It's important. And, people are looking at alternative media. And that's, for me, that's a positive, because we cannot trust anymore the corporate media and the legacy media. They're not, they're biased. And as you know, the government the federal government gave them a lot of money. So they're biased. And I believe that more people are looking at people like you for their news, for their information, for discussion on ideas. And I want to thank you for what you're doing. And at the same time, I hope that 2023 will be better than 2022.
Well, until they shut us down, right? That's the way it's gone. All right. Thanks again, Max. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.